right, good to go.
All right, thank you. So we'll call the meeting to order. Max, did you get an agenda out by any chance? I didn't see one, but
I
No.
didn't.
all right, that's fine. So it looks like we have a quorum. Lots of happy faces. That's awesome. Since we don't have an agenda, I guess I can't ask if there's adjustments to the agenda, but is there any topic that we should add to,
Well, I got some of the stuff I found out about affordable housing.
okay, so we can hold that till we get to old business. We'll talk about it then.
Okay. All
That
right.
makes sense.
What's over?
Anything else?
Bob had a topic he wanted to discuss about meeting times. There's.
What's that, Bob?
Yeah, I just thought it would be nice to talk about meeting times, given that Max is now commuting from Bath at night.
Why are you doing that?
I just
Oh.
bought a house, so now.
Oh,
living back.
congratulations. Um,
Your headlights, no matter when we do this.
okay, so we'll we can add that to our new business. Are you looking to make it earlier, Bob? Is that the idea?
Anything that accommodates Max and the rest of us. I mean, it's not just a one-person show, but I think it's asking a lot for someone who's working a full 8-hour day to stay out until 8 o'clock and sometimes later just to get back home. So maybe it's a dead fish, maybe it won't go anywhere, but I just thought it was worth having the conversation to see where we are.
Do we know what meets before us?
Here,
Nothing meets before you guys time on Tuesday.
So it's open.
it's open.
All right.
Oh, so like from 4 o'clock on is open?
Does your day of your office job, what time does that end at 5 or does it end now?
Ends about now, 7, yeah.
Okay, so, all right. So it's not like you have to fill time in between.
Are you here on Tuesdays or are you in Dallas, Scott?
Tuesdays and Thursdays,
You're here.
yes.
All right, so we can all kind of mull that around while we're going through the meeting and then bring it back up. We've got some citizens.
Yes, here we are.
Welcome. Citizens' comments.
No, other than we're happy to hear what is it that you're talking about over time. We just moved here, so we're interested in all sorts of stuff in terms of what's going on.
Okay. So, and you know that we're the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah,
And we've got a number of things that are on our plate, including looking at affordable housing, looking at how do we keep our young folks here in town? How do we find them jobs and all those sorts of things? How we could attract new businesses.
Are you a new business?
yeah.
No, yeah.
That's
No, I have
good.
a Specific business in mind.
All right. All right. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Chair report. We had our Waldeboro Food Pantry today. As of this moment, I don't think I have the numbers, but let me just do a quick check. I do not, but it was busy. Typically, we end up with somewhere between 130 and 150 families that we provide food to. And we do that twice a month, so the first and third Tuesday of every month. We also do deliveries to areas of town that have a concentration of need. So Waldeboro Village, Coles Hill, and the Sproul Block we do deliveries to. And again, today was busy. We had just a ton of fresh produce. That was terrific. So lots of folks got fresh veggies and fruits and things like that.
Are you still in the 150 range every year?
It's I think the last one if I'm going on memory was 145. And that's made up of a mix of almost third, seniors, adults, and children. The other thing is that we've had our first couple of successful Miller Kids Weekend Meals program. And we distribute about 125 weekend food packages to children at Miller School, and they take those home and they get breakfast and lunch and a snack through the week in cases where their families aren't able to provide food like that. And so we've taken that on again. I think I mentioned before that that's a pretty substantial expense to the Waldeboro Food Pantry. It's about $25,000 that we've committed to provide that service to Miller School. So but it's been going smooth. We pick up the weekend packages on Thursday, deliver them to the school Friday morning, and then they're distributed to the kids through the day Friday.
How do they determine which kids get the packages?
So that's a really good question. And originally the thought was that the kids would qualify just like they do for the food pantry, that you'd have to prove that you're in an economic zone that would qualify you for that food. But what we discovered was, and this goes back to when AIO was running the program, what we discovered was that children that were getting the packages based on that were getting bullied. And they were getting bullied because they were the underprivileged kids at school. And so we actually changed the program to be that anybody who wants it can get it. And so there's no requirement on economic, levels or anything like that. So anybody who wants to come in and get a package can get a package. And that's really kind of eliminated the whole bullying thing. And what our understanding is, the kids really look forward to it. Like they're saying, "Oh, are the packages in yet?" Because they're it's a big treat for them, I guess. So, but yeah, that's a great question. We struggled with that too.
I know it's gotten rid of the bullying, but it hasn't ensured that they're getting to the kids who need it.
Well, if you think about it, we're delivering 125 to Miller School.
Right.
And so that's like 40% of the kids.
Right.
So I would say, yeah,
Okay.
I'd say 100% yes, the kids that are needing it are getting it. And maybe some other kids that aren't in exactly the same, but even if you don't meet the threshold, that doesn't mean that you're going home on the weekend and getting what you need to get as a kid.
I should have rephrased the question. The question I should have asked was, are kids who need it not getting it for whatever reason?
Yeah, and I would say that's possible. I mean, I think the pantry says the same thing, that we're feeding probably, I think we said before, about 10% of the population, maybe a little more than that,
Yeah.
of Waldeboro. And probably we could be feeding 15-20% of the population,
Well, when you say feeding,
providing food.
add additional food to whatever else they have.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you,
Yeah.
it's an odd question maybe, but as I recall, there's some kind of documentation to establish the.
TFAP form. So you have to, so for the pantry, you have to actually qualify for that food. And the reason is that that food comes from government source. Some of that food comes from government sources, and they require that the folks that get that food meet a minimum. I don't know how to say it the proper way, but are qualified for the food.
And this is the awkward part of the question. Our property taxes all just went up at least 11%, or many of ours did.
Yeah.
Is there a box on their form that, are you liable to get more people if taxes go up?
I don't think so, because I think the threshold is based on family income, and that wouldn't change. So I think the fact that taxes are going up wouldn't impact folks that qualify.
Yeah, there isn't a box that there's a net down in the corner.
No, it's not a net, it's a family income.
No, because I've talked to a lot of people, including myself, and it's
I hear you.
a
Likewise.
noticeable hit.
Shocker.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
So that there's no reason to think that your number of visits will change because of.
The numbers went up before the pandemic. We were seeing something like 60 to 70 families.
Right.
So imagine we've more than doubled
Yeah.
since the pandemic, and that number has never come down. So from the pandemic on, that number's just tended to increase. So we've seen no relief at all in the numbers.
With respect, this is an odd, curious perspective question, but with respect to what that family probably eats in a week, do you figure you're,
It's a really good question. So what percentage of the total are we providing?
Yeah.
It varies. So one of the things that we do is that when you qualify for food pantry food, you qualify by family size.
Mhm.
And we actually dole out different quantities of food depending on how large the family is. And if you're, say, a family of 5, you're bringing home a lot of groceries
some
from
boxes of,
yeah, you're bringing home a lot of groceries and fresh produce and meat from the pantry. In terms of I would say, certainly they would get a week's worth of groceries from us when they pick up, and we're every second,
okay, so something like half maybe.
probably half. I would
Okay,
say
no,
something
that's-
like half.
Okay, that's, I should have asked that about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And the other important point is, well, wait a minute, if you have to qualify, what about the Miller Kids program? We actually treat that as a separate program at the pantry. And so the funding is different for it. We actually buy all of those packages from AIO in Rockland. So none of it's coming from TFAP or any of those sources. So it's
a
100%
separate-
bought. And it's 100% funded by the folks of Waldoboro by donations.
Thank you.
All right.
Jan,
Yes.
I just don't think though that anybody's ever been turned away from the food pantry.
That's a true statement. Yeah, so even if your family's in a particular dilemma, for whatever reason, we would provide you food for that immediate need. But in order to get onto our list of weekly or bi-weekly grocery, you would have to qualify.
I just didn't want anybody thinking that if they didn't qualify, we were going to send them home without any food.
Yeah, that is right. That is not the case. All right, and that's just about all I had. Max, that gets us up to your town report.
So town updates, and Julie and Jen, if you can't hear me or if I start mumbling, feel free to speak up. So for this month's planning board, we have 2 subdivisions in the works. It's all of them are located at the northern part of Fighters Corner. One of them's a 12-lot subdivision, and the other is a 3-lot subdivision, technically. All residential, it's just this division of land. There's no determination of what the land's gonna be used for by these people. It's likely just gonna be single-family homes, but I can't speak for what that's gonna be. Right now, I'm just looking at the pre-application, which is just the concept. It's still gonna be a month or 2 until either of them come forward with a preliminary design, which is gonna be a bit more fleshed out. Next month, we're probably gonna have an existing business in town providing or requesting an addition to their building. It's a pretty significant addition, so it can't just be a minor change. It has to come to the planning board. I'm also working with the planning board for LD 2003 and other land use ordinance updates, just some other housekeeping items. This is LD 2003 is the housing state statute items, just to create some more ability to do more affordable housing in town. We already actually addressed a good chunk of these items, so it's just the one affordable housing project, and that's pretty much it for what we're adding in, and some additions or additional definitions. And other ordinance changes just include like updating the wellhead zone, because there's some things that are missing in there that we probably should include so that we don't get a bit in a dilemma in the future for potential projects there.
Well, so pause.
Yeah.
Wellhead protection. Yeah, you're not changing it dimensionally, are you?
No, this is just allowing uses in.
that are
that aren't in there now.
adding allowed uses, not taking them away.
Correct. For example, technically, we're not supposed to be approving any residential uses in that area.
Ah.
Bit of a problem when you think about it.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking with Maine Water on making sure that's all addressed. And I know last month I gave some updates on town and its TIF districts. One was an amendment and one was potentially creating a downtown TIF program. I'm actually not going to be putting those on the November warrant for a few reasons. One is that I just simply did not have enough time to get it all done. The second is that with the downtown TIF, I'm not sure if we actually have done it correctly. Because the downtown TIF involves the town having a approved master plan done that was approved by the town. And all I could find in the records was saying the select board approved it and not the town itself. So I need to check to see if that's something we actually can still move forward with, or if we now need to have an updated master plan. Because that's one of the bigger items for how we can have a downtown plan. The amendments that I need to have for the regular TIF, they're just some projects that I need to add on, so it's really not some immediate thing I have to get done anyways. And considering what else is on the November warrant with the school bond, I kind of wanted to not be associated anywhere close to that, so you can see my other reason for that.
Yeah.
Which brings me out to my next item. Ballots are going out. I was seeing Pam stuffing the letters, so if you requested a ballot to be sent to you in the mail, you should be getting it in within the week or by next week at the latest. And I think the only items are the state items and the one school question, which looking at the minutes, you all had a good chance to talk about last time anyways.
Yeah.
I have no thoughts on the school bond that I will say out in public. Although I believe the select board is in full favor, correct, Bob?
No comment. I can't speak for the board,
Wow.
only myself,
Right there, okay.
and I will not be voting for it.
Yeah.
Make no votes, and I'm not voting for it because I don't feel they've gone about their homework. They just have not done their homework. We don't know how much they need. Do they need 100 million, 81 million, 50 million? And they've set no priorities, and we've seen no drawings, engineering or architectural or consulting views on this project. And I just think it's not a good way to go. So I'm not comfortable. with
Like where did the number actually come
I
from?
have no idea.
Yeah.
When I was on the school board many years ago, we hardly ever tried to put the cart in front of the horse in
Right.
those days.
Yeah.
And they seem to have forgotten that.
I can't speak for the school board, but I think part of this is a reaction to the Department of Education in the state of Maine that has put them on probation, basically. Because some of the buildings are not creditable or accreditable. And
Has that
If
been
you-
made specifically? Because that's.
there's a letter that was written that is acknowledging the things they've done about the library. And saying there's a list of other things, however, that you haven't done yet. But where you're indicating you're in the process of getting them addressed, so you're on probation. And ultimately, I'm told, and I don't know whether this is factual or not. You could be, your federal funding could be affected if you have federal funding.
Mhm.
And I'm supposing through the state, our school district does benefit from federal funds. But as long as the process is ongoing and we're working at it, I cannot see us being in danger of losing
I
accreditation.
think it's a pretty long trek between probation and closing doors.
Yeah.
So that was that item on the town updates. Sorry if I'm cutting you off there.
No, that's fine.
So I do have two questions for Max. One is the subdivision, the two subdivisions, same developer,
Different development, different people.
two separate developments.
Yes.
Okay. And also there was a
While you're on that one still, let me add something to your question.
Yeah.
Are these commercial developers who are aware of all the possible programs to help them make affordable housing? Whether they plan to or not, do people get acronyms shoved in front of them?
So one of these subdivisions is sort of an after the fact one where they had their massive acreage, they sold one lot off to a timber harvesting company, and then they had 2 lots left. One was sold off to what was going to be their in-laws, but because the marriage never happened, unfortunately did not happen. They're not exempt from it, and now they're trying to sell the 3rd lot, so it's a subdivision more on accident than anything. So it's not really a commercial one. I'm not expecting anything more than just the timber harvesting. The 12 lot is probably still gonna be, as I say, just 12 single family homes. That's likely my guess for what it's going to be.
But the core of my question is, because it's such a complex, convoluted system of grants and opportunities. Does somebody who has some land and plans to put a subdivision in, is there any explicit effort to make sure they're aware of what some of these programs might be?
I think that's gonna be a question that's gonna be raised at the planning board meeting, just what their plan, as I say, I don't know exactly what their plans are. They may just say. We have this massive amount of acreage, we want to split into 12 lots and then put it on the open market. And one of those lots might be these affordable housing projects.
I see it as an opportunity that we could miss.
Is there some way that we could get into the developer's hands, at least the list of,
Yeah.
programs that are available that we've circulated?
I can speak with the subdivider a little bit more, try to see if they have any more information on that. As I say, this might just be more of a realtor who's just working through the process to help split the land up and then just put it on the market without thinking about affordable or anything like that.
But if
But
there's
I-
a way to get $100,000 to help you make that happen.
I think as a matter of process, I think what we're saying is, if somebody's gonna apply for a subdivision. It ought to just be second nature that they're made aware of the rules and the opportunities.
And that might be something where they're being informed about it and they themselves might not be doing it, but they might pass that on
Yeah,
to
whatever,
potential
just,
buyers. Yeah.
it should go along with the application.
And then the second question I had is on the hospice house.
Right.
So we've had
That was actually gonna be later on the town update. Ruben actually had a quick little question.
Something to pass along to those folks on that section of road. I can't remember what's up on the poles.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about connectivity for houses that don't exist yet. I think it's mostly cable on that road, and our number is 15 homes per mile of density to get an area wired that's not. So I don't know how close they are to other homes in a given measurement, but that's a number worth passing on, because under that, it'll be on their dime to build the network out. If that area meets that density, then Charter will build on wire that area if pressed.
So if I'm not really focusing on that smaller subdivision, the 3 lots, because it's 2 homes that are already done. It's a Filer's Corner, and I think that's already serviced by Charter, but I'll have to double check maps. The 12 lots that I'm talking about, they would be front facing Old Augusta Road. And that sliver of Filer's that then goes into Chapel Road and then part of Chapel Road. And I think.
Okay, I think there's 2 separate backhauls going through that, so it probably won't be an issue. I just don't want to see 12 more homes that don't have broadband
I
in
understand.
2023.
Well, and if you, again, if part of our role is to facilitate, help make
Right.
things happen right. The best way to get a letter you can put on a thank you letter that you could put on your wall is gonna be to give somebody a tip about, if you move that house there to that
Yeah,
side of the
that's-
lot, then everybody gets whatever the rules are.
And that's usually this portion of the subdivision, the pre-application. The planning board's gonna give their thoughts, I'll give my thoughts, and nothing's really being confirmed. It's more of just. Have you kept these things in mind before they actually spend a lot of money on the actual process?
We would be a standout town if that application process
Led to all.
led to all of it, but was also perceived as a collaborative process to do things, as opposed to just things to fill out.
All right, well, I'll make sure to speak with them more on as we're
That's
going through the process. As for Jan's follow-up question, the next thing I was gonna discuss, Sylvania RFP for the hospice house that was approved at the special town meeting. The RFP is put together in final draft form. Julie that hasn't gone out, correct? Is that something that the select?
It went
board-
out, it is out and official and on our website and will be in the newspaper and on the Dodge Report and all over probably by Thursday.
There you go. It's out. So anyone who wants to take a house
And move it.
and move it, you know where to call.
I'm denying those slates on the roof.
Yeah, you-
Or
Yeah.
dismantle it.
Or dismantle it, or anything except living in it.
like
Except leaving it where it is. Yeah.
Roofing it would be a
Speaking of demolition related items that are gonna be in the newspaper this week. Volunteers of America will be having their 80 grade demolition request put in the newspaper for Lincoln County News and Courier Gazette. They got community development block grant funding so that the 80 grade building can be torn down so that they can build their senior housing units. This is just part of their requirement to do it, to put it out for public bid. We're just waiting to see how that turns out. The hope is still having it done this fall, but with this late, I don't know how many people they're gonna find that can demolish the building in time, but they still put it out there and we're waiting to get some updates on them for that.
Yeah, I was wondering on the 80 gray school that we sold for $1 to the Volunteers of America. How much in all total did we pay for that building to have it built and operated? Do you know?
Well, I can't speak for when the school itself was built back in the 1930s.
come on.
I'll
You
let
weren't there?
Clearly not there.
Yeah, I'm not able to really take a guess on any of that. And I can't really guess on all the maintenance costs that have happened over the years, similar to the bond that the town's voting on in November for the Potomac School. There's likely votes that have happened over the years for that as well.
Would you be able to get that from, can like ask the school board for that information or?
I can look into that information. I'm not sure what I'm gonna be able to find. There was the one roof fix that happened in the early 2010s when we thought the YMCA was going to be part of the town. That was
not sound money.
no.
That's
that was-
not,
Yeah, no.
if I can provide an accounting of what has been spent on AD Gray since the
Please.
town owned it, but anything prior to that would be a question that would have to go to the school board.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you have to buy it? Like the building from, did you have to buy 80s gray school from the school board? Cause I was reading something and it's like they put up a vote and we build a new building and it actually belongs to the school board. And they can sell it back to the town. And that's what I was reading. So I didn't quite understand because it sounded kind of odd because if it's public funds and it's in the town, it should belong to either the county or the town or somehow belong to the people who paid for
I
it.
remember the conversation around whether the town should take it back or not. And the principal reason for taking it back was that we would control its destiny, not some third party that had absolutely nothing to do with Waldeboro. And in retrospect, that was the right decision to make. Because the future of that building, that lot, that property would have been in the hands of someone else. And we'd have had no say at all in what was done with it. Now we have total, absolute say over how it is to be handled. So if we paid $30,000 for that, I don't know what the number was. It would have paid something to the school district for it. It was worth every penny.
yeah, again, it's something I'd have to look up. I don't really have the.
When I was on the school board, I think that this came up many years ago on something else, but I think it boiled down to if a school was obsolete and a liability more than an asset, I think it was a matter of the board voting, and $1 might have been the price, so that they didn't have to keep insuring it when paying tax. Well, anyway, it wasn't hard to part with the school after it was not in use.
Usually these things are like $1 exchange, so that might be what we paid for back in 2008 or 9, but I'd have to look that up.
Your school budget would have been higher if you were insuring it all these years.
We were, yeah, we held.
Yes, someone had to, so.
I just have a quick question. So
Yes.
if we can get that demo, do we now know? Have they approved a design? Do we know that there will be a structure then starting to be built in the spring?
They got initial planning board approval back in April or May for the building, but they did have a condition of approval that they still need to come back to have the design approved by the planning board. And that should be soon. It's either going, it's not gonna be this month, but it would probably be November or December. They just want to follow up on a few other of their conditions as well, such as the water system and the sewer district, and just show that they are in compliance with those items as well.
The property that they bought for $1 includes those tennis courts that no one can use.
Correct.
So they will be responsible for whatever their future is as well.
Correct, and Volunteers for America has discussed they're going to, because they're not really able to be used anymore, and that's where all the stormwater runs off to. It'll likely be torn up so that they have an open space.
It's part of their realm.
Right.
At that point.
And I think the tennis courts may be the only thing I can really think of that the town has a price on it, because that used land water conservation grant funds, and that was about a $70,000 grant at the time. This was the 70s. And part of the punishment we have is that we have to go with the conversions. Until then, we don't really get access to those funds anymore, which brings me to my last topic, and this is Foster's
That's the
Field.
yellow book.
The Yellow Book of Grade Rule, yes. So the town is potentially getting the Little League field that's across from Miller School donated to them from the Madomic Valley, the Madomic Valley Little League group. So the select board just hired Buckland Appraisal to do a Yellow Book appraisal on the site. This is required under Land Water Conservation Fund. If the Yellow Book appraisal can confirm that the property we are going to have donated to us is of equal value to the tennis courts, then we are able to start getting back in good faith with the Land Water Conservation Fund. So we can now use those grant funds again for other projects in town. One of the potential projects that I'm hoping will happen will be the redevelopment of the Sylvania site, so that we can have the tennis courts, basketball courts, all these recreational uses we've lost now will now be over at the Sylvania site. And we'll be able to use some of the TIF funding to help with the parking lot and other items, so that we have our match for the Land Water Conservation Grant. This could also be used for improving the Little League field itself, the remaining acreage that's up at 80 Grays for the ball field that's there, make it more multi-use if we wanted to. And any other recreation projects that we have in town.
As they completed the American United, the eel building.
Yep.
Project. Their taxes this year went up 35%. Does that additional
Yep.
valuation get into TIF?
Yep.
You're welcome.
Yes, I thank Sarah every day. I look at those numbers.
Yes.
And I do not take it for granted. That's why I want these projects to be good.
How much property does the town retain between the VOA new assigned building and the ball fields? Like, is it, where we used to have the Waldeboro days, and do we still own all that property?
I believe a land survey had to be done just to confirm what they are going to be getting. I believe VOA gets the little slant that goes downhill from the 80 Gray building. I think initially there were thoughts that the 80 Gray property line was up to the building and that was it, and then that sloped down along to the ball field. So whatever portion of that was determined in the land survey still goes to them, but
What about downhill in front of 80 Gray, where that little school building?
the town still owns that, and part of the demolition is actually going to be taking down that one-room schoolhouse, since that's even more far gone.
And that's not historically important.
But the agreement as drafted requires that VOA meet setback requirements.
Right.
So that land between the school and the football and the ball field, baseball field would be used to satisfy that requirement.
What's the set, 25 feet, or what is it,
I think it's about 15 feet.
15?
To the paved road that's right in front of it.
No, they get to go right up to the paved road because of the non-conforming structure. Because
It's
of
already
non-conforming
there.
structure. Yeah, it's right there. But this is the side property lines.
I'm still curious. I'm trying to think how big that. I mean, is that big enough for a community center back in there?
You'd probably have to take out the ball field.
There's also a right of way. So you
Yeah.
can't,
it's a tight right of way.
Yeah, but it's.
To the house and the, yeah, I know where you're saying.
Lot behind the school,
Yeah.
right through that piece of land.
My memory is that it's a big area, but maybe it's not.
It is a big area, but again, when you take out the ball field, because I remember this was a whole thing when the last developer was looking at 80 Gray and saying that he wanted 80 Gray and the ball field as well. That was a big point of contention, because that was the ball field we were giving up at that.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah. All right.
And I think that's all I have for town business, unless Julie has anything. Or Bob.
Oh, you covered it well.
Julie, are we okay?
I think we're good.
All right. And I need to take a step back because I forgot to approve the minutes which were issued. So if we could go back and look at the minutes that
Thought I missed so much instead. You just-
and we have two sets of minutes that need to be approved. We have the August 1st, 2023 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those? I did this morning. Any comments on those minutes? Have a motion to accept?
Move to accept.
Second, all right, all in favor?
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't at either meeting, except what I was on one, but. I think that first one, second meeting I was.
Okay, so minutes are approved with one abstain. EDC minutes from September 12th of 2023. Has everyone had a chance to review those? And any discussion? Do we have a motion to approve? Same, second. All in favor? George, are you abstaining?
I'm
Yeah,
going.
you're approving. All right.
And Jen has her hand up.
Yep, she did. All right, good, thank you. All right, so that takes us to old business. So I guess I think we're gonna have a little more discussion about the housing and I can't remember what our subcommittees are, what our titles were.
We discussed having housing and air growth.
Does anybody have any discussion points on either of those topics?
I have a confession.
Maybe all have the same one,
We haven't done anything for a month.
right?
I haven't done anything for months. I promise I will have a very nice, well-researched and well-compared look at the other, at our town website and the other websites of sort of comparable towns, both in Lincoln County and then some of the other towns that we might want to compare ourselves to, towns that we think, or if people want to give me ideas of towns they think are kind of.
It always surprises
Admirable
me,
towns,
if you look
or-
by population, how big Waldoboro
Yeah.
is in Maine.
Yeah.
I mean, you're up against Damascotta and Rockland and Camden and Belfast. I mean, you know, any of those names, I think, would be suitable comparisons.
That's what I was thinking, but I wondered whether people had, is there a particular grudge match going on against?
Well, what I was gonna say, and it's sort of because I haven't done what I intended to do because I've been doing other things, but a great starting point for both the career development and helping with affordable housing. Every other town is facing the same question, and some of them have things they've put on
Some
their
answers.
website. Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't need to, when I was on the school board, I was always struck how often we were reinventing the same things
Well,
that every
exactly.
other school was.
Yeah.
So they may already have some great ideas and solutions in other towns that we could.
That was exactly my plan was to, the comment being, good writers borrow, great writers steal.
And then there's artificial intelligence,
Now,
which.
I am not going to be SBF, Samuel, I'm not, no crypto here, just website ideas.
Good. Anything else? Yes.
Well, I was looking, when I came across the Bangor Daily News As a pioneering affordable housing project in a pricey Maine neighborhood, that's Rockland, which is very unusual to call Rockland pricey if you grew up around here a long time. It's always been considered not a nice neighborhood, but it was more of a fisherman. It was a harbor town is basically what it was. Limestone, the lime industry, and then fishing.
Yep.
And then, but it's like, but so they actually, it's kind of funny because it's my grandfather's sheep field that they're putting the houses into, and they're actually building them. But it's kind of,
Wait a minute, now who's they?
this is a coalition between the Maine State Prison, the Rockland Coalition, and it's also an affordable housing group.
Is
Yeah.
Habitat working on that?
Yeah,
Okay,
Habitat for
that's-
Humanity. Yeah, there's a lot of conflict going on. Let's
Of
see.
course.
It's not the Philbrook gas site, is it?
No, this is up on Talbot Avenue. It's like almost just at the base of Talbot Hill. You go up from Main Street and you're at the Tilson House, which is what used to be our house and my grandparents' house. And then he had sheep in the field there. And it was the sheep field. My grandmother, when he passed away, sold the house, but she kept the land. And so all the brothers and sisters sold it maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it was Black Brothers Construction, and they were gonna have a community garden. But when they say there were wetlands issues with it, they weren't kidding, because it was very marshy, only good for pasture, basically, but. Let's see, they're saying it's a two-phase project, going to cost 2.3 million. But it was Habitat for Humanity came up, got $500,000 to buy the land. And they've scaled it back from the original project, but if you wanted, I thought I'd just bring it in. It's like, supposed to be 13 units, and they're gonna be talking about 3 houses on the site. And then additional single-bedroom cottages totaling 13 units. They're calling it Firefly Field, and apparently it's made a local artist mad because that's her nickname.
Oh.
Okay, but anyway,
Is it
Going on.
seasonal or is it?
no, these are gonna be, and I thought it was scaled back from 18 units in 2021 because of the effects on the wetlands. And it was a 10-acre undeveloped lot, okay. So it was approved in 2022, and they're actually building it now.
Because Habitat's also doing something right sort of behind the Hannaford in Rockland. Is that is this the
Philbrook.
same?
That's Philbrook Avenue.
Okay. That's a
There's
different-
like a Irving or something in Cumberland Farms, and you take that right to help.
Yeah,
Which
there's
kind
already
of goes
some,
behind.
there's already some housing back there too in that area. Yeah, yeah,
They
that's,
think
yeah,
cottages?
Rockland, if you look, Knox County, Rockland's really big on affordable housing. They've got a lot of it.
So how have they, so this is,
Is there
I mean, this is really interesting to me that.
Yeah, they don't,
Absolutely.
they aren't managing, they've actually sold 2 of the 3 homes.
Have they indicated
Okay.
a price range for them?
No, all they said was it's that 30% again. It's like they're for the down payment on the difference between the sale price. They're putting it out at market value basically, but there's a discount based on grant money and 30%. So I'm trying to find that. Let's see.
So it's market less 30% is the buy-in.
Yeah,
All right.
something, let's say, where are they saying, okay, hold on, I've lost my space. Yeah, 2 that have buyers signed up, including Dennison, that they've opened the article with this person who lives with family in South Thomaston. Habitat for Humanity makes up for the gap between the market price and the 30% of the residents' income. So somehow Habitat for Humanity is getting the money, okay, and that's the share spent on housing. And that is generally deemed affordable. But it does not say in that the rental properties are going to be deeded and managed by the Homeless Coalition. Now, in my research, you can look under, I was making notes, there's mainhousing.organization, and I've got Lincoln County, their existing affordable housing options. So here in Waldeboro, there's 5. You mentioned some of them because of your food program. Coles Hills Apartments, there's Marble Oaks, there's the Spool Block, there's Waldeboro Woods, and then there's Waldeboro Village.
Yeah.
Okay, and they have some handicapped accessible units. There's like, say Spool Block, there's 3 1-bedroom units and 1 2-bedroom unit. And it's like, but I printed it out, it's on the affordable housing or the main housing website. and you can look up things by county. But this is a general survey, but you also have, there's a lot of programs that they offer. And a lot of these housing projects are kind of carbon copies of this. They find money from somewhere to put down, like you were talking. Right, but there's one little gem I found in the middle of everything. And one that I think is kind of like practical and wouldn't cost, you don't have to go through a bunch of hoops. If there's a way we can get it set up and promote it. And it's called, it's under other, and it's in here on this page, back in the back corner. Okay, but it's kind of weird. It's called the Moderate Rehabilitation Program. It's rental units that were rehabilitated under this program are privately owned. So there's people, they have an extra room in their house, or they can do something with their garage. They get funding from the state to pay for it in return for agreeing to reduced rates for rentals. Okay, they're saying, and your eligible tenants generally pay 30% of their income for the rent on that if they get the vouchers. But the other way I read it is the person who gets the money to create the housing unit just agrees to do affordable rent for a period of time. And that would be a more effective and some way get extra money to the poor residents of the town on these fixed incomes with these rising costs. So this is under, it's called, but I told you, it's the Moderate Rehabilitation Program, and it's the Maine Housing Authority that's in that. So I was going to dig a little more into that, see what it entailed and stuff, because the other ones requiring you have to buy land, get permits, got to do this, and a lot of it is funding. And then when you look at how they have different ways, there's income-based rents, means the tenant pays 1/3 of the household income on rent. Okay, so they use that as a marker. Okay, rent restricted means that rents are based on specific percentage of the median income for the area. Income limits are restricted. So all of these, they're just restricted income and stuff. And it's not that many people that would qualify for some of these programs because they go by the federal poverty level for granting and stuff like that. But this one, from what it looks like, there's no income restrictions on it. It's just an agreement to have reduced rental rate.
So if I applied for that and had a garage that could have an apartment in it, they would help pay me
Yeah.
to.
This is my initial look. So, but it
That's
looks
intriguing.
promising for that. Yes. Or something, if anything, that should be promoted because that gets more people involved.
It sounds like it would be a great thing to have a
Yeah.
program about where we,
Yeah.
Yeah.
once we have our hands around it, we can put together some.
Yes, Max.
Yeah.
Did two things. One, did the article or in your research, did it say how much that incentive gave to people? Like a flat dollar amount or anything?
No, it just says they're making up the difference between the 30% of the market price and their income. So it's when they say 30% of their income, it's just this, like, it's going to be an income-based type thing.
I
is
think
what I'm-
Max is asking about the renovation.
Oh, the
If you
renovation.
convert your attic into an apartment.
Like, does it give a flat $5,000 if you do that rehabilitation, or does it do percentage of it? If you don't know it right off the top, it's.
No, not off the top of my head, but when I was reading into it and I was trying to find it, because they had a big paragraph on the website and I was trying to get it to refresh my memory because I was going to talk about it at the last meeting and I forgot. I've been on
You
vacation,
come
but
across.
I think it was understood that it was like, I thought 5,000.
Is it state of Maine or is it federal?
It appears to be the state of Maine housing, but like I said, I haven't dug further into it, but that I thought was worth mentioning, okay? And
Absolutely.
then mostly it was finding out how these systems work. And I thought I'd look at like who manages these apartments for the people, and stuff, but I go off on a tangent, so that's not relevant to what we think we need to focus on.
No,
And that's this certain grouping, and then on top of that, we're also looking at workforce housing, which is a whole different income level. Also
Right,
needs
that's
to
kind of
be
what-
affordable.
But the apartment idea kind of does fit into that.
Yeah.
If there's monies available to convert attic space, oh, yeah, Jen,
Hi. So that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up, was that what we're really missing in town is something that is called, across the country, it's now called missing middle housing. And instead of getting it confused with affordable, because affordable is usually income-based. Missing middle housing is what we're talking about, workforce housing and people who aren't making the 117,000 now that you need to qualify for a median mortgage, a median priced mortgage of 300 and whatever thousand. I attended online a 2-day or 2 half-day workshop on livable communities, where people were, they were presentations and participation from all over the country. And everybody seems to be dealing with the same crisis as this missing middle housing. And they provided an awful lot of resources to look at. I've got websites and other types of information. Communities were very willing to share what kinds of things they were working towards and how they were looking to use the crisis, in a sense, to better strengthen their communities, and how the community could benefit as a community to look at it, sort of in a whole, as a whole picture. And they talked a lot about rural communities and the challenges and how different rural and urban is from the kinds of solutions that we might choose to look at. They even had, some places were even sharing different types of designs for buildings that would house multiple families, for example, but looked more in keeping with a village or the style of different things, and it wasn't adding to the cost. So it was really very interesting how to insert multiple family dwellings more comfortably into older areas, in rural areas. Anyway, I've got a lot of information. Be happy to share it if anybody is interested. I'll put together a list of things.
So at this point, Jen, we don't really have subcommittees formed. So I would say if you could share that information with the committee,
Sure.
and we, those that are interested can dig a little deeper and do a little research,
Yep.
like
Yep.
George, for example.
To me, the overarching message here is that whether it's to do with town websites, we can learn an awful lot from the other people thoughtfully approaching these challenges all across the country,
Absolutely.
probably across the world.
Yeah.
So I do have one thought. We've got folks in the gallery that just moved to Waldoboro. And so maybe could you share with the committee, like what brought you here, what the experience was like finding housing? Was it an easy process? Was it challenging? We're trying to figure out how to get more folks like you here. So if you could relate your experience, it might be good for us.
Well, I think that our situation stands quite outside of the issues that we're discussing here regarding affordable housing or creating higher density solutions within the village area in particular. Because we're looking for a house.
Could you talk a little louder? Sorry.
Sure.
Or if you could just, if it's possible, if you could just step up.
No, like there's a mic over there, so as long as you're just closer to that mic, that's.
This one over here.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one.
We moved here because, well, I grew up in Alaska and we've been living abroad, and I missed the ocean, and I missed being in a sort of fishing village, and my father's a fisherman. And so we were attracted by the natural beauty, by the water. And so, of course, we got land on the water and we're renovating a house out there. So we're kind of surrounded by forests and conservation land. But we also have an interest in a really vital and walkable downtown, and vital communities where there are businesses, where people are able to connect the dots between nonprofit ventures and where we can have a really thriving cultural center to the village. So on the one hand, I'm very interested in being out in nature, and on the other hand, having a really nice and vital and walkable downtown. So this is sort of just the beginning of our story, but as you were just talking about missing middle housing, that is something that we have noticed could be a solution to some of these problems of affordable housing. Is the village of Waldeboro has a lot of gaps. You know, there's a lot of, we know the long history of the fish block burning down and being replaced with something, and that burnt down, and there's a lot of space, I think, even in the downtown. And one of the reasons that we're here to listen to this is I remember looking at the master plan and seeing some discussion about connecting the village to Route 1, making more connections between the village and Route 1, and the other notion of what was I going to say? And I just wanted to know kind of, what people are saying about these particular issues, how to make it more visible, how to create a range of housing options.
Are you looking for a job and do you want to be on a committee?
Maybe kind of.
Interesting. That was a silly question, but maybe not. I don't know. Clearly, you've done a lot of thinking about this.
Well, we've been living in Europe, in Berlin.
Yeah, so we're coming from Berlin, and the cities and communities are built differently there. Because of a long history, but also because of different demographics. And so although we are living our houses, not in the center of town, we want to be as present in the town as we are, in our domicile. And so in order for that to happen, the more, not just businesses, but events that are happening down in the village, so to speak, within walkable distance. I mean, that, like walking is such a huge thing in Europe, of course, or riding your bike, and we were driving here and I was like, my God, I would be so scared to ride my bike anywhere, as soon as it got dark. And, what a shame that my fear keeps me off the road because people go too fast on 220, up and down, from to Friendship to Waldeboro.
Right.
And I mean,
the missing thing I left out was in the master plan, there are references to discouraging sprawl and fostering connections, business connections between the village and Route 1. So those are two issues that I care a great deal about, is making proper dense towns and properly rural areas, having these things quite separated rather than this kind of sprawly.
What did you learn from Alaska that would help us?
Well, Alaska's got the same problems as Maine. I mean, Alaska just has a more recent history. It's also new. Where Maine has a much longer colonial history before the age of cars. So that's why you have so many lovely Maine towns that actually do have that kind of dense village life. A lot of that is missing in Alaska. There are towns in Alaska that are only sprawl and there's no downtown at all. I grew up in a town called Homer, Alaska, that is at the very end of the road, and you kind of have to choose to live there. So there's special people who live there, and it's very, very beautiful.
There's cities and towns you can only get to by airplane and boat.
Yes.
I mean, significant towns.
I mean, I can speak a little bit to having come here. This is my second full year here. I came from New Hampshire, a couple different areas in New Hampshire I lived in. They're all suffering the same problem. I mean, I was still struggling with what I thought was a fairly good salary to find an affordable housing for years. This has been going on a long time.
Yeah.
So it's just come to a crisis point since the COVID stuff. And
Well,
that's that middle income thing where,
And it's an America-wide problem.
it
really,
is.
right?
It is.
Whether you're in Alaska or Maine,
Yeah.
it's the same problem, and we're all struggling
It's
with it.
just exponentially because so many people move so suddenly because of the COVID thing,
Yeah, that
exacerbated
exacerbated
everything.
it, but I think it's the electronic communication. You don't have to be there in the big city, and the remote working and things like that started the trend, you know, because I mean, who wants to stay in New York and pay $2,000 for a closet, you know? And it's, oh, I've got it organized real well. You know, you fold up the bed so you can sit on a couch, and it's like, what?
It's like 4,000 now.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Anne has her hand up.
Yeah, sorry.
I was thinking about this the other day. This magic 30% of income that's supposed to go to housing. I have never in my entire life paid 30% of of my income for housing. I have paid 50%. I've paid 40%. I think that was probably the lowest.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I went and bought a house, it was, I was not paying 30% of my housing for my house. It was.
Years ago, banks thought 25% when they were approving, I think.
Yeah, well, I've
But that's
absolutely, that's
40 years ago.
never happened.
Yeah.
This
40
was
or 50
in
years ago,
90s,
that-
you
I
know,
think that was
96.
the rule of thumb.
So I really don't know where that's come from. Because if I've wanted to buy a house, and I've made decent money like you, but I just don't quite get this magical 30%. Which is just sort of neither here nor there, but
I think it's some kind of factor that they,
yeah.
so.
What are the guys in the banks that determine, you know, when you go for a mortgage and they have to kick it up to have the number cruncher guys look at all your numbers? What are those guys called?
Actuaries or loan officers, the loan officers?
No, beyond the actual underwriters. So a lot of when you're going for a mortgage, there's the thing that they're recommending to everybody is really try to keep your base expenses of what you have to pay, including your debt, apparently, under what 35 or 34% or whatever, and you'll probably get approved for the loan. So I think a lot of those numbers are based on what a lot of those number cruncher people who decide what we might be able to afford and what the burdens may be, and for sure they're going to get their money back. Right? I think those numbers come from that.
I think it's actually one step more delicate than that. They have default rates.
Right.
And you're not doing a good job as a banker if you don't have a certain percent default. That's actually true. So yeah, it's not just, I bet 30 would work. They have worked backwards to that from who defaults and who doesn't.
Right. All right. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course. That's why you're here.
That's why we're here.
Is the town, from the planning board perspective, encouraging people to build ADUs, accessory dwelling units? Or is that kind of a neutral position?
That's a Max question.
Yeah, so accessory apartments or accessory dwelling units has been something that the town's allowed and
Yeah.
accepted for 10 years, a lot of years, before the state even was trying to get involved with requiring accessory dwelling units to be in every single town. Waldeboro's allowed accessory dwelling units for a decade, I think, and have even made it so that if you wanted to do an accessory apartment, you wouldn't be impacted by the minimum lot size either. Like, that's why I said earlier with LD 2003, we are far ahead of most towns when you actually think about it.
I think they were called mother-in-law rules.
Mother-in-law apartments, yeah,
It's a lot more than mother-in-laws need places now.
we have different things, but one of the things that has sort of happened with the apartments, and this was something that I think Mike Thayer brought up at a select board meeting, was it's just the rental agreements and laws that are around it that at least hold someone like him back from renting out one of his rooms or something. Bob, do you remember this conversation?
Yeah, I do. It had nothing to do with the laws. It had more to do with his personal lifestyle
Okay. I
and
understood.
whether he wanted to get involved in having to manage that.
Right.
Because it's an imposition on the owner, an imposition on their time. And if you're retired, you know, and you don't need the income,
And you're responsible to keep unruly tenants under control too.
that's right.
I don't approve
You know,
that
it's
particular
a-
ordinance, But
It's a sticky wicket, as Ted Worcester would have said back in the day.
So one of the challenges is that we're an older community, is probably you've figured out. And so I think in a lot of cases, it's kind of a younger man's game to look at his house and say, oh, I could put an apartment in the attic and I could add a bedroom over here and I could rent those out and make money. I mean, in a lot of cases, these big houses, and I live in one, we have no interest in doing that. We wouldn't want somebody living in our house.
Well, so how does the town feel about more apartment blocks in the village area generally?
So this was something that was gonna bring up when you brought up the sprawl in the downtown master plan and then just all these things in general. One of the problems that I think Waldeboro's kind of had with trying to get more developments is we're limited with where our utilities are located. Like I don't mind showing you the map whenever you're interested and want to come by the town office. But right now, the Volunteers for America project that I mentioned earlier, that was something that we're kind of lucky to have where it is because it is on sewer and water. They have to upgrade the water system, but the developers even pointed out the only place people are going to look at is where the sewer and water is. So that's pretty much our downtown. There's like select spots here and there. Like you said, you're on Friendship Road.
Wait,
yeah.
we're on the friendship wall, the friendship line. We're like.
Right. So you probably passed the Sylvania lot, then,
Yeah.
correct? Like that's where the sewer and water ends,
Yeah.
going down there, and you saw the properties that are on it going into the village.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm fine getting more apartments. I'd love to have more apartment blocks. I'm speaking for myself. I can't speak for anyone else here. But when Volunteers of America was approved, that was a pretty controversial topic, I'd say, because they approached us in 2020, and then it took about 3 years to get to where we are now because there was a citizens initiative to try and stop that and turn it into a park instead. The neighbors at the most recent planning board meeting, they simply just did not. There were some, I shouldn't say all, there were some who just simply don't want it there because it's the nice, quiet little neighborhood and it didn't have this huge traffic for 15 years. And if you put another apartment block like that in the downtown, you're gonna kind of get that same response, I feel. You're either in the downtown where there's sewer and water and it makes sense, and you're gonna get people say, well, I like my quiet little neighborhood. Or you're gonna put it out in the middle of nowhere in town and you're putting it in a rural area now where people are saying, this is supposed to be like farmland and you're connecting with nature.
you also need a great big septic system with.
You also need the septic system that'll be on, what is it? One of the eighth wonder of the world or something.
And you have to
But-
have a vehicle to be able to get anywhere. That's,
Right.
you know,
And,
people live in town can walk. They don't have to have a vehicle.
and, oh,
Hey, Max,
yeah, Jen,
you remember in the ordinance, we've had that for a long time. We have some things about cluster housing.
Yep.
Remember that? And I remember discussions at the time, because if you build cluster housing, then some of the requirements can be flexed for you.
Yep.
But I remember having discussions and even presentations at the time, many years ago, about more interesting technology applied to septic systems or shared septic systems and gray water systems and all kinds of things like that. And so that would be something that maybe we should update our information about what the technology is now out there that might assist people in building or creating more housing outside and away from the sewer and water.
That same information would be very helpful to say to the district has a soccer field for a septic field. Anyway, don't get me going on. The water and sewer for the schools should not be what it is right now.
You were looking at some of that at one point.
Yeah, I
right?
sent some articles in. There's small systems, there's systems that you can put at a school. Or
And And the other thing too is that subdivision presentation you gave with Emily, Max, was really interesting to me. I think that anybody on the Economic Development Committee might want to look at some of that too, because that was state-based, right? Those were state regulations.
Yep.
And that really kind of, I was not aware of those before. So that got me starting to think differently about how I might, for example, I mean, what would I say to people who were going to get involved in buying it within a subdivision? I might advise subdivisions, people who wanted to develop them or build them, to build them differently. Some of that stuff is a little weird, going from seller to seller when some of that, and the board doesn't know, I mean, the committee doesn't know about all that, but that's a very interesting thing to look at. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll send a link to everyone after this.
Okay, because that kind of changes the game for some people who might want to do subdivisions. And again, I think it's good to keep looking at what our ordinances already provide in terms of flexibility for people who want to build. Also, some of the people presenting at that 2-day workshop from other states and towns were listing some of the smaller incentives and other more creative ways of helping people to expand housing, like we were just talking about, but within their own properties or in their own houses, like, you know, Jan said that they didn't want to, but some people might. And there are some other kinds of things. So I agree. I think we should help people.
I actually wanted to quickly jump. I know that we're at 8.
We're running late, everybody, so everybody's okay. Are you okay? Probably another 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to
All right.
make one quick thing on the accessory apartment item, because that was raised a bit earlier. I also remember going to a kneecap workshop, I think last year, where almost every single topic was about housing. And one of the big things Portland did that I was interested in was how much they were encouraging in it, and what of a difference accessory apartments did. Because apparently they had districts where they didn't allow accessory apartments, but then they changed it so that accessory apartments could be allowed in it. And obviously you're not going to get into the more highly dense areas where the sewer and water is, because why bother with one accessory apartment when you can make a multi-family apartment building?
Yeah.
But it's in that little suburb areas where the water pressure or the sewer may not be as great, but you can still get a unit. And that's where a lot of people took advantage of it. I think while I do enjoy an apartment block here and there, where it's on sewer and water, I think where Waldoboro could really benefit from is looking into more of the grants, like Sonia brought up earlier, to encourage more accessory apartments and potentially get grant funding for that as well. I think when I looked at the data tonight, there's maybe 60+ short-term rentals in Waldoboro, because it's seen as more beneficial to just rent them out for $100 to $200 a night.
Yeah.
But
I was kind of wondering, anybody done a study on how much they actually make? You know what I mean? I think in Rockland, they make a lot because it's a walkable town, but
I'd have
rural and, you know.
I can have something prepared next time. There's a site called AirDNA that
Okay.
gives you the statistics of just how many, that's what I was looking at tonight. How many Airbnbs are used or short-term rentals are in Waldoboro, what average you would likely get, how much revenue they've probably made in a year. It has a lot of interesting data, and I don't mind sharing it next meeting.
'Cause that's a real problem. That's created a lot of the shortages for these apartments, because why rent and fight about getting your rent when you can rent it out? So I just wanted to see, but I know, like in Rockland, their numbers have dropped.
Right.
But,
And that's why I think encouraging more accessory apartments might be a route we should look a bit more into, because like what I told, it's like what I said for Lincoln County News months ago when I was the Waldoboro voice. You know, the apartments for Volunteers America, that's great. If just like 36 individual people in this town made their own accessory apartment, we wouldn't even be having the Volunteers America project. the people could have just gone to those instead. And if like a fraction of a percent of the residents in this town did the same thing, I don't even think housing would be an issue for this community. But not everyone can do an accessory apartment, and some may need that little push from these incentives we're talking about.
I think that's a great idea, Max.
That was my piece.
All right, good. Any other old business?
I don't know if it,
We need to get an update.
I still want
Ruben.
internet everywhere.
Yes, we do too.
So the last time I left you folks an update, we were waiting for October. Unfortunately, 3 days isn't enough to complete the work we want to complete with LCI. So I sent an email pushing Randall today, just asking, hey, what's going on? So I expect to have some kind of meaningful update for you at the next meeting. For you guys who are so nice to give us your time. The project we're working on is we have broadband to like 95% of the town. There's some houses that are left. So the tack we're taking is working with LCI Fiber Network or TDS Telecom to get us a price to run fiber to every address in Waldoboro. This achieves two things: connecting the homes that don't have anything and giving the majority of the homes two options, which is how you get lower pricing. And then obviously you want to have multiple technologies. Once you get on gigabit fiber and you can upload it a gig, nothing else matters. People, I've been on it for a month now and I work in IT, so I was already strung up on that anyway. But it's a competitive thing. Everyone around us is doing that, so we're exploring getting that done. It's early days. Once we get a price, we got to figure out where does that money come from? Is that a bond? Is that a bond that's paid back by subscribers? What are the options? We're getting something for people to say yes or no to, so we're that early in the process.
Thank you. New business.
Meeting time, apparently.
before we do that, at some point, should this group have a discussion about the prospect that the cement plant is gonna close? And there's gonna be people looking for work?
And Thompson.
Yeah, I don't think it really will, but they say it will. Seems like somebody's gonna figure out how to keep that going. But that's just my personal,
Don't they eventually just run out of raw material?
not for a long time. Being old, getting bigger.
No, the guy said 10 years about quarrying. They had, I was at a history club meeting in South Thomaston, and the plant manager brought samples and told us how it runs and, you know, off the constant thing. And the quarry they got, he said, was another 10 to 20 years, depending on.
That one.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, if they really do close it, in spite of the fact that with some upgrades and updates, I'm sure it would continue on. It's not like we aren't needing cement around here. So anyway, that may be something to do with employment, or it may just be an agenda item at some point.
Worth the research. I wasn't even aware, to be honest, so.
Yeah, I know that you said it a few weeks ago in the news.
Just announced.
A lot of geography between them and us.
People commute that far.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
want that building
All right.
torn down.
Meeting time.
Or
So what would you, Max, what is your perfect meeting time?
Well, I want something where the committee can attend as well, and there's comfort in that. I know that this is a volunteer group. You are working at 9 to 5, so I don't want to interfere with any of that. 6 o'clock is usually the time that most committees or boards would meet, and that's usually the start time I'd have. I mean, tonight, for example, we're probably gonna be at like a 90-minute mark, so if we were to start at 6, we'd end by maybe 7:30. Or if we have more time to talk about housing, gives us more time to talk about housing or talk about any of these items. I would be fine with 6. That way, when the meeting ends, the town office would be closing at the same time.
Is there, like if we said 5, is that a problem for you or is that still good?
Hopefully, that's 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah, 5 in the afternoon.
I could do 5 in the afternoon.
Okay.
they work till 5:30.
5:30?
Yeah.
But why don't, may I make a suggestion that you put out an email to the group and see if anybody would be unable to come to 6?
Why don't we do that? Unless we could do it here. Does 6 work?
Yeah, 6 will work.
Yeah, I can make that work.
Who's missing?
6 works.
Worst comes to work and I end up being overtime, I can always zoom in.
Right.
Six works.
6 works.
I move
Six
the both
works.
systems.
Okay, discussion. We're moving the meeting to 6. Discussion. This is your chance.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion to move to 6.
Second.
Second, all in favor of moving the meeting to 6?
I should have asked Rebecca, 6 works for you on Tuesday, right?
That's probably better, right? Is 6 better for you?
6 is better.
Okay, it's 6 it is.
And Jen had her hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Max.
Who's bringing supper? I'm ready to go home right now. I don't.